You just spent 2 months' salary on a rock. That's not a joke. That's literally the rule you were taught to follow. 2 months' salary for a diamond engagement ring. Here's what nobody tells you. That rule isn't a tradition. It isn't romance. It isn't even old. It's a marketing slogan, invented in an advertising office in the 1980s by the same company that convinced an entire planet that a piece of compressed carbon was the only acceptable way to say I love you. The average engagement ring in America costs somewhere between $5,000 and $6,500. The diamond inside it was marked up 2 to 3 times over what the jeweler actually paid for it. And the company that built the entire tradition you just spent thousands of dollars honoring didn't just sell you a ring. They sold you the idea that you had no other choice. I'm Mr. Price Tag. Let's find out what you're actually paying for. Let's start with the number the jeweler never puts on the receipt. In 2026, wholesale diamond prices typically run 30 to 50% below what you pay at retail. For some categories, lab-grown diamonds especially, the gap is even wider. The industry has a name for the standard markup, keystone pricing. That means the retail price is simply double the wholesale cost. A jeweler buys a stone for $1,000, sells it for $2,000. That's not the exception. That's the baseline, industry-wide. Plenty of stores don't even stop at double. Triple keystone, 3 times wholesale cost, is common in general jewelry retail. And on some pieces, especially anything under $10,000, markups can run as high as 300%. Bigger stones actually get a slightly lower percentage markup, but a 50% markup on a $30,000 stone is still $15,000 in pure margin. The dollar amount only grows as the ring gets more expensive, even as the percentage looks smaller on paper. So before you even get to the emotional weight of the purchase, the starting math already looks like this. Whatever the tag says, the jeweler likely paid somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of that number to have the stone in the case at all. Now, let's talk about the 2 months salary thing, because this is where the story gets genuinely wild. You've probably heard some version of it. Spend 1 month's salary. Spend 2 months' salary. Some jewelers still say 3. It sounds like an old world tradition, something passed down for generations. The way you'd inherit your grandmother's ring itself, it isn't. The 2 month salary guideline is a marketing invention from the 1980s, not a custom, not folklore. Advertising copy, written by a company that had a very direct financial interest in you spending exactly that much. That company was De Beers. And the story of how they got an entire culture to treat a marketing slogan as sacred tradition is, frankly, one of the most effective advertising campaigns in the history of commerce. In 1888, a man named Cecil Rhodes founded De Beers Consolidated Mines in South Africa, buying up the claims of rival diamond diggers one by one until a single company controlled almost the entire diamond supply on Earth. By 1902, De Beers controlled roughly 90% of the world's rough diamond production and distribution. At its peak under the Oppenheimer family, who took control in the 1920s, that dominance held between 80 and 90% of the entire global rough diamond supply for decades. Here's the part that matters most. Diamonds are not actually as rare as you've been led to believe. De Beers realized early on that if they simply mined and sold diamonds at the pace the Earth actually produced them, prices would collapse from oversupply. So instead, they built something else entirely. A global operation designed to control every stage of the diamond supply chain, from mine to jewelry case, and release only a carefully limited amount onto the market at a time. They didn't just control supply. They stockpiled diamonds deliberately, releasing them slowly, specifically to keep prices artificially high. Only a small hand-picked group of buyers, called sight holders, were even allowed to purchase rough diamonds at all, and only at the prices De Beers itself set. Diamonds aren't rare. De Beers made them feel rare, and feeling rare turned out to be just as profitable as actually being rare. Controlling the supply was only half the strategy. The other half was making sure demand never stopped growing, and for that, De Beers turned to advertising. In 1947, a copywriter named Francis Garrity, working for the ad agency N.W. Ayer, wrote 4 words that would go on to become one of the most successful slogans in the history of marketing: "A diamond is forever." Before this campaign, diamond engagement rings weren't even the norm. In the early 1930s, only around 10% of American engagements involved a diamond ring at all. Plenty of couples used other stones, other symbols, or no ring at all. The campaign changed that completely. It tied a diamond to love, permanence, and commitment, ideas so emotionally loaded that questioning the purchase started to feel like questioning the relationship itself. By the end of the 20th century, more than 80% of American engagements featured a diamond ring. A marketing campaign had, within a few decades, manufactured a tradition so deeply embedded that most people never thought to question where it actually came from. The 2-month salary rule came later, as a follow-up campaign in the 1980s, specifically designed to push the average purchase price higher. In some international markets, like Japan, the same playbook pushed the suggested benchmark up to 3 months' salary instead of 2. There was no historical basis for either number. It was a target, dressed up as a tradition. Part of what you're paying for is a small piece of paper, a certification from a grading lab, most commonly the GIA, the Gemological Institute of America. This certificate grades the diamond on the 4 C's: cut, color, clarity, and carat weight. It's a genuinely useful thing to have. It protects you from being sold a lower quality stone at a higher quality price, and it gives you something concrete to base the purchase on beyond a jeweler's word. But certification itself has its own pricing hierarchy. A diamond certified by the IGI site, the International Gemological Institute, has historically sold for about 10 to 12% less than a GIA certified stone of the exact same measured grade. The stones can be functionally identical. The gap is driven far more by brand perception of the certifying lab than by any measurable difference in the diamond itself. Even the paperwork has a markup built into which name is printed on it. For over a century, De Beers' entire business model depended on one assumption, that natural mined diamonds were the only real diamonds and nothing could replace them. In December of 1954, at a General Electric research lab in New York, a chemist named Howard Tracy Hall did something that would eventually unravel that assumption completely. He created a diamond in a lab. It took decades for the technology to mature, but modern lab-grown diamonds are now chemically, physically, and optically identical to mined diamonds. Not an imitation, not a substitute. The exact same crystal structure, grown in weeks instead of over billions of years underground. And they cost dramatically less. A lab-grown diamond can sell for a fraction of what an equivalent natural stone costs because the artificial scarcity that drove natural diamond prices for 100 years simply doesn't apply to something that can be manufactured on demand. De Beers' market share tells the story on its own. In 1990, the company controlled roughly 80% of the global diamond market. By 2010, after new discoveries in Russia and Australia had already chipped away at their control, that number had fallen to around 30%. Then, lab-grown diamonds arrived at scale, and the floor gave out entirely. A company once valued at over $17 billion eventually sold for close to a tenth of that. The 130-year illusion of scarcity didn't survive contact with a lab that could simply make more. Here's the number that matters most if you ever think of a diamond as an investment. It isn't one, and it was never designed to be one. A lab-grown diamond typically resells for only about 30 to 40% of its original purchase price. A $1,000 lab-grown stone might resell for $300 to $400. Natural diamonds hold a larger percentage of their value on paper, but because their starting price is so much higher, they often lose far more in raw dollars when resold. Neither one is something you buy expecting a return. The entire value of a diamond, whether natural or lab-grown, is almost entirely about what it represents in the moment you give it, not what it's worth the day after. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's worth knowing plainly rather than discovering it by accident the one time you try to sell. So let's put the full receipt back together. A wholesale diamond cost that's typically 30 to 50% below whatever the price tag says. A retail markup that's standard at double the wholesale cost, and often triple. A certification fee that changes based on brand perception as much as actual quality. A tradition of spending 2 months' salary that was invented as an advertising slogan in the 1980s, not inherited from any culture or generation. And underneath all of it, 130 years of one company deliberately engineering scarcity for a stone that was never actually as rare as you were told. The ring itself is real. The love behind it is real. But the price, the tradition, and the rule book you were handed for how much to spend? Almost all of that was manufactured by one company in an advertising office on purpose. That's the real cost of a diamond engagement ring. Next time someone tells you a diamond should cost 2 months' salary, you'll know exactly where that number actually came from. And it wasn't your grandparents'. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, seeing what's actually behind the price tag and the tradition on things you buy without questioning, that's exactly what this channel is going to keep doing. Every price has a story. Most of the time, it's not the story you'd guess. I'm Mr. Price Tag. I'll see you in the next one.